Hey, people, welcome back to the Mosaic Podcast. This is, for me, a monumental moment. It is a time in our history of our country where I saw it in the 60s, but it wasn't like this. It's a time in our country's history where we have to come to grips with who we are as a nation, with who we are as a people, with what we really believe, and how we're going to set forth the next years of our life. It is my honor today to bring to this podcast someone who's been on the show before. He's a dear friend of mine. I don't think he knows that because he's so far away. But every time I see him or he posts something or I see his face, I just have this big smile on my face because of how much I love this guy. And we don't have that much of a relationship where that would be murdered, but there's something just in who he is that allows me to feel that and others to feel that. I met him during the years that I was with Hay House and during the years Sylvia Brown came on to the Montel show. And Joe was not only the security guy for Montel and the Montel show, but he was Montel's close friend. And he would greet us with this big smile and just be there for us. And I mean, this guy is a rock of a man in every possible way. He's strong in his belief systems. He's strong in his body. He's strong in his character. And it was just an honor to get to know this gentle giant. And make no doubt about it, you do not want to be on the other side of that gentle giant's not gentleness. Um, Let me give you a little bit of a history about him, just because I don't want to spend my whole time talking about him. I want him to do the talking. Joe Pryor is an author. His book, Unlikely Destiny, has received high regards from both celebrities and ordinary people. It's available wherever books are sold or on Amazon. He's a patented inventor. He's a former dedicated law enforcement officer and a security consultant to high profile celebrities and corporate executives. Joe's focus forward mindset has translated his dreams into reality. And in his book, Unlikely Destiny, he shares his easy, common sense steps that help them overcome the odds to find personal and professional success through understanding his own unlikely destiny. If ever a country needed someone to speak up, it's now. And I invite Joe to be the spokesperson for us in the Mosaic community to discuss race relations, growing up Black, being a police officer. And I just wanted to pull from his wisdom to hopefully share some insights with the Mosaic community as to where we go from here. Joe decided to do this interview on his 60th birthday. We probably won't get it out today, but today is his birthday when we're recording. And he told me it's a monumental year for him because he never thought he would live past 30. So for him to live and celebrate his 60th birthday with us, I just want you to send him big birthday wishes. And I want you to know, not only, Joe, have you doubled the time that you've been here on this planet that you thought you might do, and you're going to keep going, brother. But you've inspired so many people, myself being one of those. And I hope through this podcast, you'll get a chance to touch a lot more with your beautiful, focus forward approach, that we understand that we do have an unlikely destiny ahead of us. It is with my honor and my privilege to welcome Joe Pryor to the Mosaic Podcast. Joe, welcome back.
Daniel, thank you very much for having me today. I appreciate it again. Like you said, it's my 60th birthday. Monumental birthday for me. So this is a monumental podcast as far as I'm concerned, and the topic that we're speaking on. I appreciate being here, and I thank you for your love, your kindness, your understanding, but also thank you for your friendship, because you've been there for me from the day I met you, and I truly appreciate that. We meet people on a daily basis, but we don't know where they're going to fit in our lives, and you've been a good fit. So thank you very much for having me today, and thank you very much for allowing me to voice my opinion.
It's my honor, and it's such a pleasure when the words that come out of another person's mouth are exactly the same words that you wanted to say to them. So I appreciate this. Let's get into it. Normally I go through a whole little rigmarole, but our times are calling for some incredible actions right now. We are on day 12 or day 13 of protests that have turned this country upside down. We have watched the nation of America in attack on itself. We've watched people stand up for what is basic human rights. We've watched the lynching of a black man on television through videos shot on cameras, through the technology that we now have. Watching a man suffocated in front of our eyes, saying, "I can't breathe, I can't breathe," and that's become the motto, the mantra of a nation of people
Yeah.
now. Talk to me a little bit about the feeling of "I can't breathe" and being a black man.
Uh, it's funny. And when I say funny, I don't mean funny in a sense of it's comical. I just think it's funny that we're in 2020 and we're still having the same conversation.
Oh my God.
I was born in 1960. Um, I was 5 years old during the Watts riots. I remember them like they were yesterday because it's amazing what your mind will hold on to. Um, I was a Inglewood police officer. I had left the sheriff's department and I was working for Inglewood during the 92 riots, the Rodney King riots. The mantra that I can't breathe has been happening over and over and over in this country. And I guess until recently, because of video and the fact that people can live stream and catch stuff while it's happening, it didn't have a lot of significance because most people didn't know it was there. They didn't know it existed because they couldn't hear the person breathing their last breath. I'm watching this on TV the other day, and I saw this gentleman breathe his last breath. I remember footage from Vietnam, and they didn't want to show people dying on TV, but they did. I remember seeing certain things happen during the Gulf War, seeing bombs deployed in different countries, and not thinking, well, that's not happening here. But living a reality of what we go through in this country every day, it does happen here. It's happening to Black people, it's happening to brown people, and it happens too much. And that's the problem right now. And that's why we're in the position we're in right now, where people are fighting back. They're arming themselves mentally, they're arming themselves physically. They're trying to make a point of saying that we're tired of not being able to breathe.
Yeah. The Reverend Al Sharpton spoke at George Floyd's one of his memorial services,
I saw that, yes.
and he gave an impassioned talk. He
Yeah,
said the "I can't breathe" statement of George Floyd is not the "I can't breathe" statement of one man with a knee on his throat, but it's the nation. It's the statement of a people who have been trying over and over and over again to rise up, but the need of the civilization that they live in has kept them from rising by holding them down. And what I wonder is, as we watch the way technology has influenced so many things, it's really one phone and the video from one phone that captured this
yeah,
moment that makes it the difference between he said, she said, he said, he said. We've heard these stories before over the past. People have said, "This is what happened. They came and they lynched us. They came and they beat us. They came and they did it." But it was the police then would say, "No, we didn't. They didn't do it, or he was violent, or he did this." I mean, even as you watch the protests, you see them coming up, a 75-year-old man walking up to them and wanting to say
yeah,
something. And I don't think they really meant to push him over and hurt them and harm them, but they pushed him over. A 75-year-old man didn't have any ill will at all. And they wouldn't. The thing that struck me even more than the pushover was the guy that went to kneel down to help him and the other officer pulling him back. Where in the world did that become okay? And so I want to you have the interesting perspective of being a police officer for 22 years and a black man for 60 years. And I want to know, first of all, how in the world, seeing what you saw growing up, did you decide you wanted to go become a police officer?
Every police officer that I met that of color, whether they're black or brown, Asian, whatever, they decided to do the job to make a difference. I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to be different. Based on where I grew up and the things I experienced and I saw, I wanted to be that different cop. I wanted to be that cop where, or that deputy sheriff where people would come to me and say, hey, I need your help. And I was in a position to help them. I could help them and I could make the decision to help them. It's just like when they pushed that gentleman over. The one cop knew the right thing to do, bend down and help him. The other cop pulled him away from it. I think the pushing down of that man was deliberate because you gotta look at what happened and their actions after the fact. It was a deliberate act to push him down. It was a deliberate act to let him stay there and possibly die. It's the same thing with Mr. Floyd. It was a deliberate act because the two other rookies that were there said, hey, look, I think we need to turn him over. Where the senior officer said, no, we're going to stay right here. You have to be an individual. And I say that to my kids. I say that to people I work with. When I was a training officer, I said that to my trainees. You have to be an individual. You can't always go with what the crowd is doing. I didn't do that becoming a cop. I grew up in Watson, Compton. The last thing you would think somebody growing up in Watson, Compton would want to be as a cop.
Yeah.
So I was always an individual. I took my own path. But on that path, I send a different signal as far as I'm concerned, or a different beam of light towards people. I send a helping light. I send a helping energy. I send a helping passion that's in me. People that know me, I've been the same since I was a young kid to now. They say, you haven't changed, even though you were a cop. I says, well, you have to be the individual that you are in order to grow up.
Yeah.
You have to stay that person. If you become a part of the crowd, then you're just like everybody else. I've always been different.
Yeah. So, we can have the conversation about standing up and being yourself, which is a really important conversation, whether you're in the police force or whether you're working in a corporation or whether you're living your life or whatever it is you're doing. Standing up and being yourself is so important. But let's look at the two cases that this really brings in front of us. The two cases of a man sitting on the throat of another man,
Yes.
two other officers sitting holding him down when he's been handcuffed and already if you go into it 2 minutes and 43 seconds unconscious, where
Yeah,
there's no need to hold them. I mean, they're just holding him down for no reason, just to hold them down.
exactly.
One man watching, and now it's coming out that the two men that were on him were saying, well, he was our commanding officer, we're 4 days in the force, we didn't he told us what to do, we just did what he said. And then the other guy, who was a white guy, 75 years old, who gets pushed over, someone goes to help him, and he knows to stand out and what to do, but then he doesn't stand up to the one who says, no, you can't do that. How do you, first of all, how do you have the courage to stand up to the authority? I mean, they did studies like that in Hitler's Germany.
Yeah,
They would take people and put them in a room and say, we're only just playing now, you're going to shock this person, and we're just playing, it's not going to really hurt. And they would turn the voltage up and see if people would do it just because they were told by an authority person to do it. And an overwhelming majority of people, like 75, 80%, turned the charge up, the electrocution up so much that it would have killed the person
yeah.
if it wasn't stimulated, because an authority told them to do it. It really comes down in some ways to not how is somebody trained, what does somebody believe, how do you have the courage to do it, but what do we do with an authority that is not a good authority, and how do we stand up to that when we may suffer personal injury as a result of it?
The other day I heard something from Stephen A. Smith on ESPN, and he said that, and it's something I never thought about, but I did think about. He said, if it was the training, because they always say that police officers need more training. They said if it was a training, they would do it to everybody. Black, white, orange, purple, they would do it to everybody. It's not the training, it's the individual.
Yeah.
You could train, and what they do when they train us, just to give you a little background, anytime you go through training, I don't care what it is, whether it's shooting a gun, driving a car, policy and procedure, um, penal codes, vehicle codes, and laws of the state or the city that you work in, you have to sign off on that training. You have to say, I took this training, I signed off, I know what I'm supposed to do. We can't use chokeholds, we can't do this, we can't do that. All that stuff is a part of your training. They teach you how to do things safely, but if you do something outside of what they taught you and you sign that piece of paper saying, I had the training, they should be able to fire you.
Mm.
Now, because of everybody being able to record situations, they can't say, I made a mistake, I did this, that. Those incidents that we saw were deliberate. They were deliberate. The deliberate, knee on the neck. That's not something I was trained to. Apparently, that's something they trained their department to do. Um, if it's deliberate and it's a part of your training, then that's the wrong training. But if that's the case, why aren't they doing it to everybody?
Yeah.
And again, it goes back to a white officer doing it to a person of color, a white officer doing it to a black person. And when you do that to a person of color or do it to a black person, that just tells me something about you as an individual.
Yeah.
Now, when you grow up in an environment where you're around multicultural, you're around black people, white people, Asian people, you're around, Spanish people, it gives you a different perspective because you can understand where people are coming from. And I think that's what happened with me growing up where I grew up. There was a lot of people in my neighborhood. I understood who these people are, but you have to look at them as individuals. I can't blanket everybody. I have a 90-10 rule. 90% of everybody on this planet is doing the right thing. They're going to work, doing their job to the best of their ability every single day. There's that 10%, that makes the news. That 10% of people that you work with are wrong. The 10% of people that you work with that don't do their job properly. The 10% of people that you work with, if you're in law enforcement, that break the law. And they
Yeah.
keep doing it until they get caught because that's their personality. That's what they decided to do.
Yeah. And I believe that too. I feel like you and I are in sync with that. And I just read something where Biden said, it's just that 10% of the people that are bad people, and the other side just glammed on that and said we're going to have 10%, we're part of the 15%, we're part of the 10%. They're going to wear stickers to make them
Right.
feel like right. And what happens when the 10% make up our government? What happens
Yeah.
when the 10% infiltrate into our leadership? What happens when white supremacists enter into our police departments
Yeah.
and make up that 10%? Like I saw a poster, which I'm sure everybody did who's watching these marches. Who do we call when it's the police that's committing the crime?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is it just a white guy, a naive white guy's perspective in this situation to say basically most of the cops are good cops? Or because you talked to, I heard somebody on the news saying, yeah, that's what the white people believe because they walk down the street and nothing happens, and occasionally there's a rotten apple there that does something wrong. If you're a black man and you walk down the streets, it's like 10% of the cops are good because you have to watch your back on every single situation, and every black man knows that he has to talk to his black son or daughter about what to do the first time he's stopped by a policeman.
Yeah. I look at it. It's funny. I remember many occasions. I've always liked nice cars. I've always had a nice car. I've had a job. I was able to buy a nice car. I had a Porsche and I had a Corvette. I remember numerous times driving my Corvette, and I was telling, I had a conversation with one of my best friends and one of my former partners this morning about when we got pulled over by police because there were two black men in a black Porsche driving down the street at night. And we
Yeah,
got pulled over, and the only thing that saved us was we had badges.
yeah,
But the way they spoke to us and the things they said to us before they saw the badges was a different world. And that's the world that I worked in, but I didn't have to live in based on the fact that I had a badge. Now, it takes them to come to my car to see my badge. It takes them to come to my car to understand that I'm a police officer, not an idiot just driving a car. But I've experienced that many times. I've been, followed in stores. I've had people, I get on an elevator and I'm wearing a suit. I have a briefcase in my hand. I'm coming from court or I'm doing something or I'm working with a client. And I've had, white people look at me and grab their bag, grab their purse. And when I was younger, it annoyed me. As I got older, I felt sorry for them.
Yeah.
I had a neighbor when I lived in New York that tried to pepper spray me because I was walking by her. She thought I was going to attack her.
Wow.
She found out who I was and who I worked for at the time, what celebrity I worked for at the time, because she talked to my doorman, and she wanted to apologize to me. And I told her, at this time, I'm not going to accept your apology, because I asked her a couple of questions. Has a black man ever raped you? She said, no. I said, has the black man ever attacked you? She said, no. Has a black person ever did anything? She goes, no. I says, well, why did you try and pepper spray me just because I was walking home? And I said, you know what? I'm licensed to carry a firearm in the state of New York, and I could have shot you because I thought you were pulling a gun out of your purse.
Yeah. Yeah.
And all it would have been is, bodyguard to the star shoots unarmed white woman.
Yeah.
And I probably would have been in jail based on that. So I understand it from both perspectives. I understand it being a black man in America, a large black man. And I know most cops aren't going to have a conversation with me if they think I'm a threat.
Yeah.
They're going to hit me. They're going to shoot me. They're going to pepper spray me. They're going to tase me
Yeah.
before I have a chance to say, look, I'm not a threat. But just
Yeah.
based on perception, that's what I always think about. And those are the things I would tell my son. I would tell my daughter. I'd tell everybody. Got to be careful, but you just don't know anymore, because you could still get shot. You could still get your knee stepped on, and you could still get hit or pushed based on the fact of your color.
Joe, from your experience in life, in all aspects of life, and growing up in Watts and Compton and Watts, in being a big black guy, and being picked on as a kid, and standing up to some of that. I know some of your stories and some of
Yeah,
the bullies that picked on you, because you weren't always as big as you are now. Hard to believe, but and people would pick on you, but you turned your back and you stood up to them, and they didn't pick on you anymore.
yeah,
And running security for people who they don't have security people watching their back for no reason. They have security people because people get crazy. And I
yeah,
remember
absolutely.
I remember in our first podcast that I want to tell people to go back to, and we'll post it in the show notes here again, that you saying sometimes it's the little guys that think that are the hardest ones, that think they're crazy. They just have little man syndrome, that
Yeah, yeah.
that do crazy things. How is it possible, from your perspective, that the color of our skin should draw so much hatred?
Wow, that's a good question. Um, I don't know, and I say that because I'm on the receiving end of things a lot,
Yeah.
and I don't understand it, because you haven't had a conversation with me. You don't know anything about me. I've worked with, cops of all color.
Yeah.
I had a partner once. And I'll say it this way: I got stuck with a guy once, a little white guy, who we did a traffic stop, and he stopped a black guy driving a car, and his wife was in the car. So I'm like, why are we stopping him? Well, I just got to stop him. Why? He's anything outside of the car. He does his thing. So we get back in the car, and I said, so why'd you stop him? He couldn't give me an answer. So I
Wow.
said to him, I said, let me explain something to you. I'm only going to say this one time. I'm working in this car with you. If you want to work a one-man car, go ahead and do your thing. I said, but if you stop somebody again and you don't have a reason for stopping them, we're going to have a problem. Because my mindset is, if I pull a car over, I don't care if you're black, white, orange, or purple. I'll just say it that way. When I stop somebody, I walk up to the car and I tell them why I stopped them.
Yeah.
That way we nip that conversation in the bud. I stopped you because you made an illegal turn. I stopped you because you threw a lighted substance out of the car, a cigarette out of the car. I tell them why I stopped them. If I'm going to write you a ticket, this is why I'm writing you a ticket. Most people, I don't care who they are, respect that. They don't think I'm picking on them. But when you walk up to a car and they say, why'd you stop me? Or they say, or you go up to a car, the cop, and you say, do you know why I stopped you? That's going to annoy some people because they don't know why you stopped them most of the time.
Yeah.
If it's just the average Joe below citizen. They don't know why you stopped them. So when you say, do you know why I stopped you? I would tell my trainees, don't ever say that to somebody. When you walk up to a car, tell them why you stopped them. But a lot of guys, especially guys who are small in stature, they get a badge and a gun. And that's their liquid, in a sense, like, you know how they say guys go to a bar and drink, that's their liquid courage.
Yeah.
That's their courage. That gun and that badge, they think, oh, I can do anything, I can say anything. And because people would put up with it, or people would be afraid of it, or the fact that, again, you have a gun and a badge, you could say and do whatever you want, they could get away with it a lot. And then once you develop that pattern or that behavior of doing that, then that becomes that individual, because they lose respect for the people that they're supposed to serve, and they lose respect for themselves, because that's the only thing that makes them a man.
So, Joe, where do we go? Like, we've lost respect now a little bit for the police force. Maybe we should have lost it a long time ago. But again, being a naive white guy who walks down the street, look, if someone breaks into my house, I call the cops. If someone steals something in a store, I call the cops. I don't call the minister or the doctor or somebody else or the yogi. I like something
Right.
happens where I need help, I call a cop. But we've gotten to the place, and maybe it's just white privilege I can say that still. But there are a lot of black people walking down the street that say, when we get in trouble, we don't call a cop because we don't know how that's going to end up. And so much so that certain people are starting to say we should close down the police department or defund the police department. I mean, the conversation's starting to come that maybe the police department in itself of serving and protecting is not really serving and protecting anymore, and we should use those resources to go to some other place. What do you see, having lived both sides of the equation? How is our way forward?
I say this, when you get on the phone and dial 911 and you need a police officer, you're going to get it's the 90-10 rule. Hopefully you'll get the right person. I think what should happen is, when people do stupid things as police officers, when they do deliberate stupid things, they should be disciplined. They should be fired. And I think if they knew that going in, it's just like, I'm not a real death penalty person, but at one point in my life, I was like, you know what? If somebody outright kills somebody, and we have all the evidence to show that they killed that person, they did a heinous crime. If they knew they were going to die, they probably wouldn't do it. But if they thought, I could sit on death row for the next 30 years and die in a cell, that's a lot better than, getting the juice, or sitting in an electric chair, or getting lethal injection. If cops know they're going to be fired based on their behavior and their actions, I think that would change some things. Now, if you want to defund the police departments, I'm going to tell you right now, defunding them is not going to do anything.
Yeah,
it's going to make
stupid.
it worse, and it's going to lower the standards of what you could have received or got to go to your academy to become a police officer. You could defund all you want, but I guarantee you, you're going to need a police officer one day. You're going to need a firefighter one day. You're going to need, and firefighters, just like police officers, it's one of those jobs where you need good people. And there are a lot of good people out there. But again, that 10% is what's getting all the press. So they want to defund the police department. I say, if you do it, it's a slippery slope. It's a very slippery slope.
I don't see anything good that comes in defunding the police department, because
No.
but part of even the initiative to even say something like that means that we've lost so much faith in the institutions that have protected us, that we don't feel protected anymore.
Exactly.
And so, from your perspective, because look, you have such an interesting background that you bring to this, of knowing exactly what a black man feels like, being in his Porsche and being pulled over until you bring out the badge, that they ease up on you, being on the police force that watches a little white guy pull somebody over for no reason, growing up in a neighborhood where people don't feel they can trust the cops, and quite frankly, like, living in a cell isn't any worse for a lot of those people than living on the streets where they are.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're going to get a roof over their head, and they're going to fight the same wars that they fight. They're just going to do it in a little cell. It's not a pleasant environment, but the environment they're living in is not a pleasant environment either. How do we get out of here? I mean, how did we get ourselves backed into this hole so deep? How do we get out of this? What do we do?
I, I don't I, I don't think it's anything we can get out of because we can't. It's a situation. I don't think we can weed out every bad person. They could do a lot more screening when it comes to applicants. They could try and get the best of the best, and that's what you hope for when you're calling 911 or you're calling for a police officer or you need help from law enforcement. I remember working in West Hollywood. There's a community in West Hollywood of Russian Jews that do not trust the sheriff's department. They do not trust police. They don't trust LAPD. They don't trust anybody because where they came from, these were first and second generation Russian Jews. They didn't trust the police.
Yeah.
We had a murder that took place. They know who did it. We never solved it because they wouldn't talk to the police.
Yeah.
They would rather go to the jail than trust and talk to the police. And it's something that happened in their community. They took care of it themselves, but they just didn't trust the police. And I think that's where we're getting to right now. People don't trust the police, just like during COVID, where we are right now. People are so afraid of catching the coronavirus, they're afraid to go to the emergency room.
Yeah.
So they'd rather stay at home and test the waters of trying to survive that way than going to a hospital just because they don't feel good. So we're kind of in a catch-22 situation. It's the same thing with law enforcement. People don't want to call the cops because they don't trust what they're going to get on the end of that call. They don't trust it.
But it like for me, the problem doesn't like the police are getting the brunt of a conversation that has nothing, that they're only a small pinprick into. We don't trust our government. We don't trust some of us don't trust our president. We
Yeah,
don't trust the political system. We don't trust, what do we trust, you know? And like 3 weeks ago from today, COVID-19 was the biggest thing that could ever happen.
yeah.
There've been there George Floyd has put COVID-19 on the back page of the news, and people that would never walk outside, frightened that they can contact this contagious disease, are now walking arm in arm and breathing tear gas and coughing into systems. And yet we haven't really seen that many increases. Maybe we will see more increases,
We
but we don't
probably
even,
will.
in one way, I hope we do, so that everything doesn't just seem like it's something we can't trust and it's a lie. But we don't know what to believe anymore.
Well, that goes to show you right there, we're in a really sad state based on the actions of one man or several men doing the wrong thing. People are so afraid and so tired of what is going on with law enforcement and police officers that they would risk their lives literally because
Yeah.
that's what happens when you're Black in America, just walking down the street or driving while Black. You risk your life every day going outside. These people decided, you know what? I'm not going to worry about the coronavirus. I'm going to go outside and protest because I believe we need reform. I believe we need to stand up for the people that are being brutalized, killed, and murdered for no reason, just based on the color of their skin. And I see that. I was like, I don't know if I'd be out there with people. If I wasn't taking care of my 86-year-old dad who
Yeah.
has Alzheimer's, I would probably be out there with him.
Yeah.
But right now, I have to protect him, so I can't go out there and protest. But at the same
Totally.
time, I understand why the people are out there.
So, and I just, as we're talking, it just come example after example after example comes up. How do we ask people to stand up for in our government when people in our government can't even stand up to the leader of our country? There can't be every single, I mean, are we so divided as a nation that every Republican believes exactly what Donald Trump says and every Democrat doesn't believe what he says? Are there no Republicans that think the way he's acting is beyond approach and can't stand up? But we don't have the courage to stand up to authority of any sort because we're scared of the punishment that might happen. So
But
what message does a police officer get from just watching the way our country operates? That the political parties don't even stand up to the person in power. Why should they stand up? Why will
it
it
goes
matter
back.
if they do anything?
Yep, it goes back to the police officer with his knee on Mr. Floyd's neck, and the other two guys saying, "Hey, we should maybe turn him over." It goes
Yeah.
back to the police officer that pushed that old gentleman down, and the other guy that tried to help him, and he pulled him on. I'm not into politics. I don't like politics,
Me either.
but I know an idiot when I see one. And the person that's running this country to me is an idiot. He is doing things and saying things on a regular basis. I don't watch when he speaks. You know what I do? I look at the people behind him and I watch them cringe.
Wow.
I watch them try and keep a straight face. I
Yeah.
watch them try and not look at him, because most of the time when someone's speaking, if you're standing behind them, you may look at them and you may look at what they're, just look at their mannerism or they don't look at him when he speaks anymore, because
Yeah.
they're afraid of what he's going to say, and they know what he's saying is wrong, and they still stand there and do nothing.
Yeah.
And that's where we are in this country a lot of times. When some police officers do stupid stuff and other guys are standing by watching them, they don't say anything. It's because, oh, I don't want to rock the boat. I
Yeah.
don't want to be that one person. You should be that one person. You should stand up, because
Yeah, but
that's
it
the
doesn't.
job you took.
Look at what happens in our employment when we're in an organization or a company or a corporation, and we know they're doing the wrong things, and we try and stand up, and we get beaten down, or we get fired, or we get dismissed. When we stand up against race in sports, when Colin Kaepernick goes down the kneel, he loses his job and loses what 4 or 5, 6, 7 years of employment because he did a nonviolent protest that they only wish to God they could have right now rather than what was going on.
Exactly,
Right?
exactly. And look at the NFL now. Oh, we're Roger Goodell saying, "Oh, we made a mistake."
Yeah, you made a mistake a long time ago because
Right,
they somehow we transferred it from police or inhumane activity, and it's not even police. To me, it's systematic around the world.
exactly.
It wasn't in Nazi Germany. It was the Nazis doing it to the Jews. At
Yep,
a certain point in time, people think that people are things, not people. And when we think that somebody's a thing, we can do whatever we want to them. We lean down and swat our dog for doing something wrong, and we think that we're disciplining them, but people aren't dogs, and dogs don't deserve that either.
right.
And so I just like let's go to your inspirational part now, and like help me find where you think, how did our destiny become so unlikely as this, and what is this unlikely destiny that we suddenly are taking on this persona of allowing a powerful 10% to rule a very moral and good 90% and not standing up for it.
Well, the fortunate thing right now is the 90% is standing up.
There you
The
go.
protests that we see worldwide right now, that's that 90% standing up. They're
Yeah.
decided, you know what? Not going to stand for it anymore. I'm tired of this happening. I'm tired of seeing it happen. So that 90% is standing up. Now, where we need to go from this, and that's where my focus forward mindset comes from. You make a mistake, you brush that mistake off and you move forward. When you have a deliberate action, that's not a mistake.
Yeah.
There are things going on right now in this country that are deliberate. And because they're deliberate and it's not a mistake, they can't have a focus forward mindset. But that 90% decided, you know what, not standing for it anymore. I'm
Yeah.
going to step up. I'm going to say something. I'm going to protest. Now, we got a bunch of knuckleheads mixed in there when they started looting and tearing up stuff. But then you saw that 90% say, you know what, you're not tearing up my city.
Yeah.
I saw people posting stuff with gang members in certain areas, telling these people that were trying to promote the negative and the evil during the protest, you're not destroying our city. I saw people take bad people and give them to the cops, and the
Yeah.
cops arrested them. I
Me
saw a
too.
guy on TV the other day. He was breaking up parts of the curb so that they could throw at the police. These people stopped him. They took his hammer and they gave him to the police, and the
Mm.
police took him. Now, the 90% is standing up. That 90% has got to stay on top of what's going on right now. We just can't. And I think we're at a point now where everybody's going to keep moving forward. They're going to focus forward, and they're going to keep moving, and they're going to keep trying to keep things right. Right now, a lot of our political leaders are trying to figure out where they stand in all this. But that vote that's coming up pretty soon, that's going to change the world. And what's going to wind up happening is, if we don't have real change during the vote,
Yeah.
you're going to see more protests and you're going to see more things happening. where that 90% is saying, we're not going to stand for this anymore. Because
Yeah.
a lot of what's going on right now in this country, even though it was going on before, it's based on the leadership we have and that leadership not being put in check.
Yeah. You answer my next question, sort of, but I want to just still ask it anyway, because like I grew up in the 60s and I wasn't very old, but I was marching in the, I was born in 1955. So in the 60s and 70s, I was at 15 years old, I was marching through the
Yeah,
streets, and I believed with such a fervor that that was the moment that it was going to change, that the evil in the world was going to finally be taken over by good, that love was going to finally win over hatred, that the stupidity of how we treat somebody based on what their religion is or what their skin color or what border they live behind or how much money they make was going to fall apart. But it didn't.
it
It did
didn't.
for a little while. What can we do this time to not make it just be a change for a little while? What would you suggest? Anything that you could think of? What can people on the streets do? The 90%.
You have to see humans first. You have to see the person that's standing next to you as a human being first. Then we can move forward. Now, the people, again, that 90% that's stepping up right now, I don't think they're going away this time. I think that 90% is going to keep pushing and they're going to keep moving forward and they're going to keep pushing for change. And we're going to see people, hopefully, in this country decide to get rid of some of the old guard and start running for office, running for Congress, running for the Senate. We're going to see different people moving in those areas because they're going to have the backing of that 90%. And that 10% is going to have to kind of go away. 10% is never going to leave. I don't ever want to see that 10% go to 20%. And now we're working in an 80-20 world. I
Yeah.
want to keep that 10%. I want them to get pushed down to 5% and have it 95-5.
Yeah.
But I think the old guard is going to get pushed out in a lot of ways based on the people and what they believe this country should be, not what it is right now.
Do you feel like some of what's happening is like when you and I were growing up, and I've got a few years on you, so I'm an old, a little older. I'm
Just
teasing.
five.
This five. But when you and I were growing up, we had a sense of community. We had a religious organization, whether it was for me the synagogue or for you the church, or for there was something other place where people congregated that made their life, that brought them together, whether they only did it on a Sunday or a Saturday. It's still every week there was a place that they came to that talked about their moral values. I'm not a big church person now because I believe in spirituality and I believe the church organ has to go down nails too. But in one way, I wonder if we don't miss that organization, if we don't miss that sense of purpose that the church within our community held for us, that said,
Right.
here's our set of standards, here's our set of beliefs. Do you think what we're going through is a dearth of moral values because those things, those institutions aren't as present in our lives
Well,
as they used to be?
absolutely. Again, that's the human factor. The human was first. You have to see the human side of everything. That was our base. Going to church, going to
Yeah.
synagogue, doing these things. That was our base. Once that base was taken away or lost, based on the people that were running these organizations, or based on the things that were happening in these organizations, or the fact that a lot of government legislated church out of some of the organizations, like being able to pray in school, being able to say the Pledge of Allegiance, being able to do some things in school, which as a kid, you spend more time in school than you spend at home.
Yeah.
So when that was taken away in the schools, that's just my mind. That took away a lot of the base or a lot of the foundation that we were able to stand on. Now, if you don't have a solid foundation to stand on, you start believing and doing whatever happens to you or whatever you think is right. We have to have a solid base, and that has to be humans first. It has to be. And if you can see that person standing next to you as a person, as a human being, that's going to help you 1,000%. But if you can't see them as human, then you'll do anything or believe anything or put them in a situation that's not safe for them or for you.
Joe, talk to us about how to see humans first. I saw a great post. It said, "We are not a black nation or a white nation. We are not a white race or a Latino race. We are one race. It's called the human race. How do we get back to
It,
that place where we are the human race?
it has to come down to individual effort. You have to be, you have to see, you have to do what creates the human factor. You have to be a part of that. I'm working on something right now that I'm not going to talk about right now, but I'm working on a couple of things right now to kind of bring that to the forefront. You have to see that, and it has to be an individual choice. The
Yeah.
thing is, if you believe in God and if you believe in a higher being, we have free will. Free will gives you the right to do or say or be what you want. Now, if you choose to be evil, that's you. If you choose to be good, honest, decent, and all the things that make, apple pie in the world, then that's going to be you. But you have to make a conscious decision to do what is right.
I also think it's so important. Like I've been sitting with this, wondering if I should even say it or not, because I'm so ashamed of it in some ways. Because I grew up in a lower middle class neighborhood in a lower middle class family, and we had a happy neighborhood. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
we just played on the street. We played in the driveway. We used the schoolyard was our play. We went every day to play there. And then I remember a black family moving into our neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
And I am so ashamed of what happened. Houses went down in value almost instantly. There was the white migration out. And we went to a neighborhood. We left too. We stayed longer than most people because
Right, right.
we liked it and we didn't believe that way. But we ended up leaving too because the value that we had in the places, the same exact neighborhood. It's just so systematic, the racism that exists. It's the same house, it's the same neighbor. How do they drop? Because they believe a certain level of people, that animals or things are moving into our neighborhood rather
Right.
than people.
Yep. That's
And
systemic racism. Yep.
the people those were not bad people. They didn't think they were doing anything evil, but they were bad people and they were doing something evil.
Yeah.
Because inherent in I remember even one time going to my mom and saying, boy, it's so cool, we have now black people in our school. And there's this guy in track. I mean, he's running so much faster than any of the white guys.
Yeah.
And my mom sat down with me, naive, stupid, and said, well, that's because, Danny, they have an extra bone in their ankle. I said, what do you mean they have an extra bone in their ankle? She said, yeah, that's what happens. They came from a different continent and their bodies developed. I
Yeah.
was like appalled. I said, Mom, how could you say something so stupid? But how do you get rid of that inherited bias? I mean, I clean myself every single day trying to get rid of it because I don't know where it exists.
Well, the thing is, you did get rid of it
I
because you're
did.
talking about it.
Yeah.
You got rid of it. We can only do better than our parents, hopefully.
Yeah.
When mentally, financially, spiritually, hopefully we can do better than they did. Sometimes what winds up happening is when that mindset is passed on and that belief system is passed on, which it was for many years, and it still is because we're going through this right now again.
Yeah.
It's not something that we could ever get rid of, but we have to keep the 90% in the forefront of everything that we do. Because if
Yeah.
we don't, if we start regressing again, if it gets to 80-20 or 70-30, you think this world is bad now?
Yeah.
It's going to get extremely, extremely bad.
Yeah.
So you changed a lot based on where you are. You have to understand and realize that. You're
Yeah.
still going to have those memories based on what you grew up seeing, but you had enough in you to know that, Mom, that was wrong.
Yeah.
So, but you did develop past that. You
But
focused forward.
it's so interesting because I remember two incidences now in my later life. When I was at Hay House, we published Tavis Smiley, and
Uh-huh.
Tavis and I became buddies for a while. And he invited me as his publisher to a dinner that he was being honored at. And I walked in, and there was not a white person in the room, and I was fine with it. But the brothers came up to me and said, "Brother, I think you're in the wrong room." I said, "No, there's Tavis. He's my buddy. He's up there." And they started to congregate around me, and there were militant blacks in the room as well as peaceful blacks. And they said, "Brother,
Yeah.
I don't think you belong here." And Tavis caught it out of the corner of his eye, and he said, he came running over. He said, "Any of you touch this guy, you will be in pain.
Yeah.
Uh, this is my friend." And I saw it operate the other way for me when I was a minority in a majority situation.
Right.
I also remember being in Jamaica, and we went to work with the government of Jamaica. And they told me, "We're putting you up in a nice hotel, but the neighborhood around this nice hotel, you do not want to walk out here at nighttime, because you are a shining white boy in a black place where people where what you're wearing on your feet as sandals costs more than most people make in 5 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do not go out for a walk unprotected." And so I just thought, this is stupid. I'm going to go. I'm not going to do that. I mean, this is not what I believe. But when the places believe more than the people, how do people have the courage to stand up to that?
That's hard. It really is. It's like I said, me being from where I grew up, becoming a sheriff, that was tough because I lost a few friends because of that.
I'm sure.
And they say, well, why would you want to do that job? I said, because I want to be different. I want difference. I want to do something that's right. But they didn't understand it. And you're going to do things from time to time that people aren't going to understand. That's when you have to, again, if your foundation is solid, you stand on it and you keep moving. You have to, because if there's ever going to be change, somebody's got to do it.
Yeah. Joe, if people are listening and just love the sort of basic, not simple, but just easy wisdom that's coming from you, the guidance that comes from just the knowledge of understanding all the sides, how do people get in touch with you, and how do they even join behind in this work that you are about to start, which you can't say now, but one day I want you to say, because we need you, Joe. I mean, I said to you in the green room before we came on, you're somebody that needs to be a voice in this world. The voice needs to be bigger, and I know you're taking care of your dad, and what a noble
You
thing
know,
to do.
yeah, I'm taking care of my dad, but in the process of me taking care of my dad, I'm getting myself ready to be a voice.
Yeah,
I'm getting myself ready to do things because I don't want to walk out there half cocked and not have the right mindset, not have the right foundation laid. So when I stand there and I open my mouth, I want people to be able to listen and hear what I'm saying and not try and judge me based on what they don't know.
yeah,
So if I open my mouth to say something, I want to be able to back that up. Um, my book Unlikely Destiny, you can get it on Amazon. That book is my foundation. It set a lot of things in life for me to get a better understanding of who I was as a person, who I am as a person, and it also allowed me to become stronger. Writing that book for me was something that I had to do. I started writing it in New York. Um, and just before I moved back to LA, it was finished and it was out. But I lived most of my life in California. I had to live in New York in order to get this book done because it gave me a perspective of living on both coasts. If you pick up a copy of my book, and I'm not here to plug my book, but if you pick up a copy
I
of my
am.
book,
I'm
it'll
here to
give you
plug your
insight
book.
into
Pick up a copy of his book. No ifs about it.
yeah,
Pick up a copy of Unlikely Destiny right now and start to do it. We got to take actions to support the people that are supporting the belief systems we believe in. And one of the ways you can do that is to pick up a copy on Amazon of Unlikely Destiny right now while you're listening to the podcast. Just go there and order it. It's not a lot of money.
Daniel.
It'll change your mindset, because it'll help you to
I
focus forward.
appreciate that.
And if you like the things Joe's saying, get involved in what he's doing.
Absolutely, absolutely. I appreciate that. I really do. I just want people to get a better understanding of themselves, and that's what a book took me. It got me to get a better understanding of who I was. But again, it allowed me to continue to be that individual so that I could make a difference. Because that's the only way we're going to be able to do it. You can't always go along with the pack. You have to sometimes separate from the pack and do what you need to do to get things done.
Do you? I don't even know if you have a website for it. Do you have a website that you can get people to, or do you have you on Facebook?
I have Unlikely Destiny, unlikelydestiny.com.
Okay.
I'm on Facebook on Unlikely Destiny. I'm on Instagram, Unlikely Destiny. So you can follow me in those places. Focus Forward on Twitter. So you can follow me in those places. I post stuff all the time. And again, it's about being positive. It's about living positive, but it's also about being an individual and understanding that one person, because we've seen it over and over, can change society. It
Yeah.
happens in the positive and the negative. So
Joe,
that's where we are.
thank you so much for for taking time on your birthday to do this
60,
podcast
60,
with me.
60. Yes.
60, your 60th birthday. Thank you so much for doing it. Let me just take 1 minute and summarize. If ever there was somebody who didn't think that one person could make a difference, if there was ever somebody who said, what is my voice going to matter? I'm not important. I'm not somebody that people look up to. I'm not somebody that's going to have a voice. Take a look at what's happening in the streets of every town in the world right now, not even just in America. One man,
In the world.
all across the world, one man by the name of George Floyd, who didn't even have the intention to do what he's doing. One man is changing the course of society, the way we live, and hopefully it will be forever. So you can't say anymore that who am I? I'm just somebody that the people don't know. I just am one voice. You can't say it anymore because we're
Yeah,
watching one voice become the voice of many. When your voice stands up to the world around you and does not permit it, forget about just police and whites and blacks, every in sports, in relationships, in business, in every aspect, in medicine, in every aspect of society, we are being pushed around by bigger forces that are not meaning to do us good. They're meaning to do us sometimes harm. And
absolutely.
until we start this revolution, pardon me, because I don't normally speak like this, but it's a mosaic revolution where the broken pieces of this world come together and create what we want the world to look like by all of us coming together and standing together. It's not that we have to teach people or fix people or do things. We just come together as the beautiful, diverse pieces of this world, and we stand together as a mosaic, as the people, as the 90% are doing right now, marching in the streets of many major cities and many small towns. Your voice does matter.
It does.
And one of the ways to get your voice and to find what your voice is to go to Amazon.com right now and buy the book Unlikely Destiny.
And the mosaic.
Thank you so much. But right now, we want Unlikely Destiny because you do have an unlikely destiny if you would just stand up and use your voice. Buy it as a birthday present for Joe today.
Thank you.
Okay. Again, Joe, it's an honor. Thank you for being here with me. I love you, brother. I love what you're doing. And let me know when you are ready to launch what it is that's coming. I will be one of your top supporters. And
Absolutely. Hey, Daniel, thank you, brother. I appreciate everything. Thank you. And thank the mosaic. I appreciate everything.
it's my honor. For those of you who are listening, thank you again for listening. If you like this show, rate and review it, share it with your friends, get this word out. And I'm going to put it out here, whether it's true or not. You'll be looking for Joe Pryor in the years to come to become a part of his movement, whatever he's starting. It's it. And in the meantime, stand up to your unlikely destiny and start to live it. Thank
Thank
you
you, brother.
again. God bless.
God bless you. Thank you.